All right, we're in the 9th chapter, the last half of the 9th chapter of the Tanya. In the 9th chapter of the Tanya, the Rabbi explains the battle that's taking place inside of each and every Jew between what's called the godly soul and the natural soul. The godly soul feels God is certain of God. The natural soul feels a person's self. And it's certain of the natural self. In today's world of psychiatry, psychology, that's called being healthy. Healthy is just feeling yourself. That you feel yourself and you haven't got any problems. Nothing disturbs you. But the fact is that that's really one of the main causes in our generation, in our days, we can see of sickness, of emotional sickness, of mental sickness, of personal anxieties and fears, namely that a person feels that all there is just himself. That's all that there is. But it's such a positive feeling, it's such a certain feeling, such a sense of certainty that it's very hard to imagine that there's anything more than just feeling yourself, and that's all that there is. To the degree that there are famous scientists, and especially in the world of psychiatry, psychology, that uses as a basic axiom that there is no God, there can be no God. And as soon as you start thinking, Freud once said that as soon as you start thinking of the meaning of life, is you're already sick. This, of course, is not so. And that's the job of the Jewish people, possibly one of the reasons why the Jewish people are so disliked, because they come to wreck up everybody's feeling of certainty, of the comfort zone, of that all that exists is me and there's nothing more than me. Says the Rabbi that this real battle, the battle that happens outside of us, why there is anti-Semitism in the world, because the Jews represent this higher power of meaning, absolute meaning, and the rest of the world says, why should I deal with absolute meaning? I have it in myself. I feel myself. Here I am. Nothing greater than me. This war that's going on in the world is really going on inside of each and every Jew. And that's the purpose of this book. This book is, you want to call it a workbook, or maybe even more a war book, on how to manage the war that's going on inside of us. Who are the two combatants in this war? There are two selves. One self is called the natural self, that feels ourself. The other self is what we call the godly self, that feels the Creator. Of course, which one is more real? The Creator, of course, is more real. The Creator, He creates us. He creates us every second, and He creates us. The word creation implies that He creates us from nothing. Or in the language of Kabbalah, He creates us from His Word, or from His light, or from His letters, from His powers, or from His spheros. But however it is that God is creating the entire world and everyone in it, including me and you, every instant brand new. He's creating us for a purpose. That we have a responsibility. And our responsibility is to the Creator. What does the Creator want us to do? What's He lacking? He's lacking that this world should be a perfect place. That's why that's the whole story of the Bible. That God created a world and He put man in the world, in this garden, to work on it and to protect it, in order to make the world a more perfect place, to make this garden flourish and to keep out the weeds, the spiritual weeds and the emotional weeds. And there should be a good place, spiritual, emotionally good, physically good. It should be good. But who defines what good is? So the one hand we have the natural animal soul, that it defines what good is. That you have the whole entire gamut of philosophers and psychologists and psychiatrists and political science and political philosophies. They're all trying to vie who determines what good is. One says communism is good, one says socialism is good, one says that the hedonism is good, one says especially the Greek philosophies, big arguments about what is good and bad. And then on the other hand we have the Torah. The Torah is the Creator's instruction book for the world, and it has a whole totally different definition of what is good and what's bad. And it could be the things that seem to us to be very good, for instance, to eat milk and meat that's cooked together, is according to God very bad. to write a beautiful letter or a poem or a symphony on Shabbat, for a Jew to do it, is very bad. But for the world it could seem to be very good. So who says what is good and what is bad? That's the battle going on inside of him. Which voice should we listen to? Now, according to the Tanya, each and every Jew has inside of him two souls. It said it right in the beginning of the Tanya, right in the first chapter. These two souls are the monumental battle between Jacob and Esav, Yaakov and Esav, his brother Esav, that they were twins. They came from they were born at the same time, more or less, the seconds one after the other. Esav came out first, and Yaakov came out holding onto his heel. This battle is the battle of meaning, from meaning in the world. What is meaning? Where does meaning come from? People need meaning. That's why the people wake up in the morning. There's something to wake up for. They have a reason to get out of bed. Have to have some sort of meaning. When people do not have some sort of meaning, they feel very bad. Who gives the meaning? Who gives the meaning? Does Esav give the meaning, or does Yaakov give the meaning? Have you ever seen the pictures, the rallies in Nazi Germany, the rallies that were made in Munich, in these places where there's 1 million people, 2 million people, and they scan the crowds with wonderful photography. You see, these people have found meaning. The looks in their eyes, they're just looking toward the future, toward something greater than themselves. They're willing to give everything they have, their whole being, their whole, for this meaning, this greater meaning that they found. Imagine if you could scan the crowds in the time of Napoleon, it would be the same thing. The question is, who gives the meaning? Is the meaning given by people that, in the end, cause just destruction and pain, but it seemed to be very good at the time? Or is meaning given by the Torah? Is it given by the Torah? Well, the Torah is a very small voice. There's not too many videos of people standing with this look of fervor in their eyes, listening to words of Torah. And even if you were by, a lot of times I was by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Lahavdil, to separate from those other evil people I talked about before. And the people that were listening when he was speaking, you never saw anybody like with, burning in his eyes, let's get out and do it. And everyone was thinking, everybody was looking, everybody was trying to understand what it meant to digest it so that it should come from themselves. The Rebbe's idea was to wake up something inside of each and every one of us, each and every human being in the world. Namely this feeling of godliness. I am being created by the Creator has faith in me. I have to listen to this voice inside of me. You can call it the conscience, your conscience if you want. There's a battle going on inside of each and every one of us. Says the Rebbe in the Tanya, the body, human body, is called a small city. And just like two kings that fight over a city, each one wants all of its inhabitants to listen to it. Also, there are two souls in every Jew, and they fight. It can be likened to, I think we talked about this last time. This is an idea that I thought of. You can take it or leave it, but this is how I understand it. It's like a one person that has a tremendous ability. There was the story of Rachel O'Keefe. Let's take another example of a person that either he could be a great robber, murderer, thief, king of the thieves, or he could be a brain surgeon, help people. Inside of him are fighting two battles. If he decides he wants to be a robber, there's a lot of action. And as soon as he makes that decision, all of a sudden all these impulses come to him, and intuitions, and wonderful ideas, and what to say to his men, and how to lead them, and where to go, and how he's got all sorts of senses open up to him, which city to attack, and where the money is hidden in the bank. A whole different world. He lives a whole entire world of crime. On the other hand, that same person, he can decide, I don't want to be a criminal. I want to help people. I'm going to be a brain surgeon. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to help others to do something good. All of a sudden, he makes this decision. He goes to school and learns. All of a sudden, totally different impulses come to him. Impulses of how to heal people and how to be a better person and how to help others. And then he decides, no, I'm going to help others financially as well. And I'm going to help other people emotionally as well, not just be a surgeon. And I'm going to be a good example and I'll make people happy. He's just thinking about how to make the world a better place. And the other one is thinking about how to get more from the world, as much as possible, how to get more power, how to get more prestige. Inside of each person, there's two urges, two souls, and when a person makes his decision what he wants to do, as suddenly impulses come from that side, then encourage him what to do. Same thing in every single Jew. There are two souls. One soul is what's called a natural soul. When you make that decision about a natural soul, all of a sudden comes, what type of car should I buy? Where's the best party to go to? Where I can make the most money? Somebody's trying to take my money. I'm all angry about it. Somebody's trying to take my prestige, my power. He's angry. He's uptight. He's anxious. He's thinking. All these impulses. On the other hand, if a person decides, listen, I'm a Jew, I'm a creation of God, I want to do what God says, all of a sudden all these other feelings come to him. Like I said before, you can call it your conscience, you can call it what, but the Torah suddenly starts directing the person, no, this is not a right thing to do, this is a good thing to do. This I must do, this I have to do, I don't want to do it, but I'll do it. This I want to do, but I won't do it. Suddenly totally different impulses come to him, and he starts feeling God. He starts feeling the Creator. This is not so much demanded from a non-Jew, but it is demanded from a Jew that he should love God. It's one of the commandments of the Torah. To actually have a deep, inner, personal relationship with God, not because of what God does for me, but because of God's very being, the goodness of Hashem. Suddenly the person starts to feel a tremendous awe, love, fear. He becomes emotional about the Creator. And that's what we'll talk about now. Kach, similarly, fourth line down, last word in the line. Kach, shtei nefashot, the two souls, ho Elokis, the godly soul, v'chayonis abahamis, and the enlivening animal natural soul. Shemiklipa, which this natural soul comes from what we call the shells. It covers over the truth. Milchama zu and zu, they each have a war. Ala guf, v'kol evorov, on the body and on all the limbs. And like we spoke before, in the middle of this whole thing, who decides which way to go is what's called the nefesh hasichlis, the intellectual soul. The intellectual soul that only wants the truth. The godly soul provides it with truth. God exists, God creates us, God is good. The animal soul provides it with a different type of truth. Take this, like Alice in Wonderland. Take this pill, you'll feel good. Do this thing, you'll be rich. Take this, you'll feel fulfilled. Oh, it works. It felt good. It feels good. It feels great. He goes to the Munich rally. He feels like $1 million. This is the animal soul says. They're warring on the body and all of its limbs. She'elukis of the godly soul. What's its desire and its will? She'tehi lavada moshelas alav. That it alone should rule over the person. And should conduct him. Pakol evorim, and all the limbs, Yusarim lashmuuto, should be turning to its orders. Ubatelim, its law, and completely negated, surrendered to it. The gamri, totally. Right, like the brain surgeon. Once he goes to learn in university, and he becomes totally surrendered to the laws of nature, how the brain works, where the veins go. He can't make up his own anatomy. The anatomy that's there is already there. He has to be completely negated. He wants this person's brain to work the way a brain's supposed to work, not the way that he wants it to work. Omer Kavala, the godly soul the same way. He learns the Torah, he realizes what is the order of the world, the anatomy of the world, and he wants to act accordingly. Namely what? That he wants to do the commandments, he wants to do what God wants. He wants that the body should be a vessel to God. I just thought of a story the other day. Very, very interesting story. We're talking about why should a Jew do the commandments? Here the Rabbi is trying to say you should do the commandments not because it's written in the book, but you should do it because God wants it, and you should do it because God is creating you, and God's creating you for a purpose. I just spoke with a very good friend of mine, Rav Yosef Yitzchak Grevich. He told me a story that he had just finished giving a lecture, and a woman came to him. He was waiting for the taxi, and asked him a question. He said, Rabbi, can I ask you a question? He said, I'm waiting for my taxi, but it ended up the taxi came late. While I'm waiting, you can ask. So she said, that she did not come from a Chabad family. She had no connection with Chabad. She had heard that there was a Lubavitcher Rebbe. She lived in Borough Park. And she had never been to the Rebbe. She never felt any necessity to go to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. There was no... She heard he was a tremendously wise man, a scholar, and a very charismatic person, etc. But she never... One day it happened to be that they took a shuttle. She was on a shuttle bus. The shuttle bus went to Muncie, and on the way back, the driver was supposed to go from Muncie to Borough Park, and it stopped. The driver said, "I'm stopping in Crown Heights for half an hour." Everybody was angry. Who said it's Crown Heights? What's Crown Heights got to do with it? It's not even on the route. What is it? Said anybody who wants to get another shuttle should get another shuttle. It's wrong with it. That's it. That's the way it is. So she said, "Oh, here's my chance. I can go to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It has to be big." She said, "I'm coming back in a half an hour. So here's my chance. I can go to the Lubavitcher." So she goes out and she asks people where the Lubavitcher Rebbe is. And this is all she's telling to this Rabbi Garevich. She's telling. She went and she says, "It's a huge line of men, a line of women." So suddenly the Rebbe is giving out dollars and he's giving blessings. She says, "Okay, she's standing in the line. Now she can get $1. She can also see the Rebbe. She can get a blessing. Why not?" Interesting, experience. So many people standing there. There must be something going on. It must be something interesting. So she gets in line, and she figures it'll be quick, but it wasn't so quick. And ended up it was an hour and a half. So she missed. It's no big deal. She can get another bus also. So she gets in front of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe gives her $1 and says to her, "Bracha v'hatzlacha, you should have a blessing and success." And she moves on. That's it. Everybody's by the Rebbe. There's 5,000 people waiting. The Rebbe hasn't got. So the Rebbe called her back. And she came back and the Rebbe said, "You should know that a Jew should do Torah of mitzvahs not just because it's written in the Shulchan Aruch, but because that God commands us. The Creator of the universe is commanding us." So she said, okay, she took it and she was blazing mad. Who is he to tell me why to do Torah of mitzvahs? Why did he even say anything like that? Why she thinks I don't serve God, I don't believe in God? She was really very angry. She said she went home and in a couple of weeks she was very angry. So, but after a couple of weeks, all of a sudden she said, fell into her mind, she doesn't know where, a thought that maybe she's really missing something in the non-religious world. Maybe there really is something that's there, that's to it. She said all of a sudden she remembered what the Rebbe said. That's not because it's this book against that book. It's not the books against reality. There's a real world and then there's the book world. The Rebbe said no, you should do it because there's the Creator of the whole universe who creates this reality and that reality. You should do the Torah because she said all of a sudden this tremendous feeling of certainty came over me that I'd never been so certain before and happy that I was a Jew and I could do the Torah and the commandments. A great happiness. And I didn't feel that I was missing anything from the world, and I didn't feel that the world was threatening me. I could maybe there's things in the world that don't contradict the Torah. She said, now I got married after that, and I have children, and they're older, and I want to give them the same thing that I got from the Rebbe, but the Rebbe's not alive. This was after Gimel Tammuz. The Rebbe's not alive. How can I give them the same feeling of certainty that I have? I can't bring them to the Rebbe. The Rebbe is not here. Maybe I should put them in institutions of Chabad. So he said to her, first of all, I think you should tell them the story, your children. Don't tell them a part about your doubts. Just tell them the story that you went and you got this certainty, and then you'll see what happens. He said he didn't take her phone number or anything. He doesn't know what happened. But that's just the idea. The godly soul says that the reason you should do Torah and the commandments is not because it's written in a book and not because of what you're going to get. The reason is because it's the truth, and it's not only that, but it's so intensely, amazingly true that it's hard to believe that there could be such a thing that's so true. That God is really creating us, and God cares about us, and He put us in this world in order to do His will, to make this world a better place. The whole thing is it doesn't make sense. It's much more sensible to say, you're in this world, it's very bad, do the commandments, you're going to go to heaven. Right? Go to heaven. Not like the other religions. They say you're going to go to heaven, but you're really not. Right? But our religion is going to go to heaven. That's not the point. The point is not what you're going to give, what you're going to receive. The point is the truth, what you're going to give. That's what the godly soul says. The godly soul says, I want to do what God wants because God is infinitely true. He's creating me from nothing, just from love. in every instant. He says that's what the godly soul wants you to feel. But the problem is we don't feel it. Everyone feels themselves naturally, and God created it this way. He created it that we would feel ourselves and we would understand, listen, the world is a good place. Well, what difference does it make if I ride my motorcycle on Sunday or I ride it on Shabbat? What possible difference does it make? On Shabbat there's less traffic. Right? It's better. What could possibly... Says the only difference is that on Shabbat you're doing it because you're getting pleasure out of it. Not because it's true. Because it's true. And the rest of the days of the week, right, if you don't drive on Shabbat, then it shows that the rest of the days of the week you're also doing it because God wants it a little bit. Right? You got a little bit. There's a little bit of godliness in the days of the week also. That's what the godly soul wants. But the godly soul becomes much more emotional. It becomes much more deep. It becomes much more, how do you want to say, there's a word for it, dynamic. There's even a better word, passionate. Because in the end, God, when we're with somebody that we really like or that we really love, our children, our wife, our family, our parents, it should be a very passionate experience. A person that has should have love for others, for other people, to see the good in other people. When a person feels this with God, we're not big enough to even in any way appreciate the greatness of God. So that's what we're going to see. Once a person decides, listen, I am deciding I want to listen to my godly soul. I want to do what it says in the Torah. I'm going to do what it says in mitzvahs. It's not so easy. Making the decision is not easy. But the godly soul is there to help you. The godly soul is there to help you. And it itself has a will. It wants that all the limbs, Yeshoim Hashmosa, that should be turning to its orders. Ubetelim aletzel lagamri. Last word on the line is lagamri. It's 8 lines from the top. 9 lines. Umirkov Allah. And it should be a vehicle to it. A vehicle to it. Right? Like a television is a vehicle for the programs that come through it. We should be a vehicle for God's will in the world. Like the brain surgeon is a vehicle for healing. It comes through his hands. The Yulavush, and the whole body should be a garment. La'eser bechinotea, to its 10 let me say, categories, the 10 categories of the soul we learned before. The 10 sfirot, we learned that in the second chapter. The Gimel Levusha, and the third chapter of the Tanya, and the 3 garments of the soul, which are thought, speech, and action. Shidlabshu kulam be'vorei guf, that the godly soul's will, thought, speech, action, love, fear, awe, wisdom, understanding that's what should rule my body. And the body should be filled with them alone. And there should not come any stranger inside of them and derail my purpose in the world, my actions, my speech, and my thought, my feelings. Namely, talat mochem shabarosh, the 3 aspects of intelligence in a person's brain, yum should be filled, michabad shabenefesh elokis, from the chachma, the bina, and the das of the godly soul. What is this godly soul's chachma? Like we said before, chachma is concept, and bina is understanding, and das is realization. That they should be filled with chachmas Hashem, the wisdom of God, the concept of what God is, ubina, so in understanding Him, litbonen, to contemplate deeply the gadluto, in God's greatness, asher ad ein chekav ein sof, that God's greatness is unfathomable and there is no end to it, which of course the human mind cannot conceive of anything which is unfathomable, and it can't conceive of anything which has no boundaries to it. But you should try as much as you can, and when you do, then the holy me'em al yedei dat, you give birth to them by means of what's called dat, of realization, the power of realization, hayira b'mocho, fear in the brain, upachar avaya b'libo, and the trepidation of God in your heart. When you realize how great God is, how infinite God is, and God really is creating you. Every instant, your whole being depends on God, who's totally infinite. He's totally above the spiritual. He creates the spiritual. As when a person starts to think about that, a tremendous fear, awe falls over him. The Avas Hashem and love of God. This is also talked about in the 3rd chapter. The Avat Hashem, a love of God, ke'esh bora, like a flaming fire, belibo. Karish feishalav is like flames of fire. Like King David said, my soul is thirsting and lusting for you, God. With a lust and with a desire. The dove kabo to cling to him in Ein Sof Baruch Hu. This happens when in the time of prayer. Right? You don't see people walking down the streets swooning. That's what synagogues are supposed to be for. When you just link your emotions, you arouse your emotions only to God. You take everything else off of your mind. That's one of the reasons why in synagogues it's supposed to be talking as much as possible, and it's supposed to be women don't sit together with the men. It's not a family affair. It's an affair. Like men don't usually take their wives to business because it's not a family affair. It's not an emotional a good time. A person takes the wife to business if she can help in the business. Only she can help in the business. Here in praying, you don't have to have your wife help you. Right, hold your talus or something with her, hold your sitter. You don't need anybody to help you. The time of prayer is supposed to be a time where you get emotional about God. Prayer is called the service of the heart. You think about God, and suddenly the godly soul wakes up. The godly soul starts to perceive the oneness of God. B'chol leiv v'nefesh hamod, with all heart, soul, and all of your being. From the depth of your heart to b'chlal amini, which is in your right side of your heart. Talked about in the beginning of this chapter, which is that it should be so much love for God, yetocho ratzuf ahava, that the inside should be paved with love, mali gadush, and it should be even more and more love filled and overflowing, ad shetitzpashet gam lechalal samoli, until it overflows also into the left hand side of your heart. To control what's called the sitra achra, to control your feeling of separateness from God. Okay, what's happening here? The Rebbe is explaining over here a process which is a constant process by what we call a tzaddik, and which is by a Beinoni, happens in the time of prayer. What happens in the time of prayer? What is the battle here the Rebbe is talking about? The battle is a battle of feeling. What you feel. What a person feels. And how a person reacts to those feelings. If a person really feels something that he's part of something greater than himself, which is the truth, then that feeling all of a sudden gives him a whole totally different perspective on life. But even more, if that thing that he feels is really good, then he'll have love. Let's say, for instance, he gets from the American government realized they made a mistake in his tax reports or whatever it is, or he won the lottery in America, right? $15 million, $3 billion, they just had $3 billion. What's $3 billion? He loves somebody, he's happy to somebody. What is happy? He's happy because he won the money. He says thank you. What does he say thank you to? He won. If he didn't win, somebody else would win. If there was somebody that gave him the money, he said they're giving him the money. The reason they're giving him the money is because, he won some sort of a prize. Oh, thank you very much. He has gratitude. He feels a feeling of gratitude. he feels that he's small. And suddenly he feels very small, this thing. If he doesn't feel very small, he's not going to say thank you. Let's say he wins $3 million. He says, well, why didn't I win $30 million? I don't understand. Why did, right? Zalman won $30 million. Why can't I win $30 million? He's not happy. He doesn't feel small. Exactly the opposite. He feels he's big. He deserves more. The smaller, the more humble a person is the more thankful he can become. Right? I think I told you the joke. The two men who won the $30 million lottery in New York. I told you the joke before. No, I didn't tell her. Two poor Jews in America, in Brooklyn. They bought the lottery and they won $30 million. $30 million. But what? The lottery, they pulled the number in the middle of the night. And they just announced it the next day. They call the people up the next day. But one of the two friends, there was Moshe and Zalman. Moshe has friends that work in the lottery office, and they called him up. They said, Moshe, listen, you and Zalman, you both won. Moshe runs to Zalman's house, knocks on the door. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Zalman